want to share something with you. And I want to share with all of you guys.
It's not about you.
No. It's not about
you.
No.
Sit down and have a black person come up.
I want to share something.
It's not about you.
No, it's not about me.
Who are you?
Who
are you?
Okay. I want to say something.
Who are you?
I am Anders Zachrisson, and I'm a Swedish man. And I want to say, as the representation of the Swedish people,
fuck you and kiss my...
that we have failed to take you home. We have failed.
Propagandist.
We have done that.
Come to Africa,
Propagandist.
steal our grandparents, steal our money, steal our gold, steal everything from us.
We have
Still
failed.
we are sick.
I want to ask you for forgiveness. We have failed to take care of you all.
Say whatever you want. No, we're not gonna listen. She's gonna say whatever she wants. No, listen. No. She's gonna say whatever she wants.
Come down.
Shut the fuck up. Now shut the fuck up.
This whole narrative about the West being fundamentally racist is symptomatic of a world where we should have learned by now that apologizing and going down on our knees really achieves nothing when it comes to fanatic anti-racist activists. The West is the part of the world that is the least racist. This is a fact. We continue to become less and less racially intolerant for each new decade. No generation of Westerners have grown more racially intolerant than their ancestors. And that is good. But in order to solve this problem, because it is a problem for anti-racism activists who need an imagined constant increase in racism, like a fish needs water, there's been a broadening of the definition of racial intolerance and racism to now also mean holding any negative attitude towards multiculturalism, which has fuck all to do with race and has everything to do with criticism against bad ideas and values. If we look at the extremely misleading political narrative that is being spread, we could just as easily believe that we white Westerners have never been more racist than we are now. We are, for instance, rarely, if ever, told about how the Chinese authorities harass blacks in China despite having no scientific proof supporting their hypervigilance against blacks without any travel history in their fight against COVID-19. We're not told about the vast acceptance to ridicule and genuinely racist mocking of black people in Arab TV and in movies and in the Arab world in general. Only we, the white Western European descendants, are the problem. The real and most pressing problem. Here, racism is everywhere, and it's our ever-growing fault and our eternal responsibility to fix. Personally, I don't get how anyone can come to that conclusion, since seeing how racially intolerant a country is as a whole is actually incredibly difficult. It's hard to conduct serious surveys on the topic, since you then need to set up parameters from within which you can view someone as being racist, which is highly subjective. But we can see that in different surveys that have been conducted regarding racial intolerance, the further east and southeast you go from Western Europe and North America, the worse it gets. India, for instance, scores very high on all of these surveys when it comes to measuring racial intolerance. The same goes for countries like Lebanon and Jordan. I've managed to compile the information from different surveys in order to see which countries appear most often, high up, and in none of the surveys a single Western European country has ever even made it into the top 10. When it comes to racial intolerance, it was East and Southeast that were the nastiest, every time. But I mean, who knows if we can trust such surveys, but it's still worth asking the question though, why are we hearing so much lies about how insanely racist the West is, when the few available numbers shows us how much worse it quickly becomes when we move away from it? Well, it's because those lies have political power. So the Black Lives Matter movement managed, after turning Minneapolis into a blazing inferno, to get the Minneapolis City Council to defy logic and vote through a disbanding of the Minneapolis Police Department, or partial disbanding. It's gonna drastically downsize it, and this is done heavily motivated by the demands having been laid forth by completely ignorant activists who want to defund the police. Ask and you shall receive, at least if you play your race card right. And that's power. It's completely insane, but it's a display of political power. So the Black Lives Matter movement in Sweden, yes, really, that's a thing, is an imported idea from the US which is based upon nothing except the ambition to open up similar opportunities for cop haters and professional victims here. Again, more political power. For being a nation which runs on innovation and ingenuity perhaps more than most, we actually lack creativity when it comes to our national pastimes. And for some masochistic reason, we find the need to import issues which we can then claim as our own, incessantly pissing on America when it comes to their world policing, which we now want back. When they start moving out of the Middle East, we want them to get back at it because we understood that there's going to be a power vacuum. But we bitch about Israel, we complain about their healthcare system, their prison system, their drug laws, their gun culture, but we just still cannot stop caring about what you Yankees are up to. And this is now once again being shown. Let's get this straight. Sweden does not have a problem with cops shooting racial minorities. At all. It has a problem with that like it has a Sasquatch problem. We just don't. In fact, apart from freak accidents, Swedish cops fire their weapons extremely rarely. On average, the Swedish police reports that they during a period of over 20 years have only about one person per year being killed by a police officer through the use of his or her firearm. 1 out of 10 million citizens a year. But in later years, there has been what's called a drastic increase, and during a 6-year period, 19 people were shot and killed by the police. But we should add that this is due to us now living in a country that's full of a completely unnecessary imported gang problem. So the reason for any increase in fatal shootings by cops in Sweden isn't because they all of a sudden became racist and started enjoying killing racial minorities. It's more because the people, primarily racial minorities, started carrying more illegal firearms and are exciting multicultural gang wars in our inner cities. They're reacting to a problem with increased violence as a result of unregulated mass migration and then resulting failed integration. Our police hasn't become more racist or more violent, our cities have. That's an important distinction to make. The Black Lives Matter riots we've had in Sweden, where confused hysterical idiots shrieked about cops murdering blacks in the US and apparently now also in Sweden, really showed the reality, which has been worrying me for several years now. And that is that Sweden is full of a large group of people not only being non-white, but who deeply despise white Swedes. It only took something as stupid and irrelevant as an imported, contextually bullshit cause from these people to take to the streets in their thousands and begin to vandalize, attack, and spew hate and racist demands at white Swedes. That shit had been bubbling right below the surface of normalcy. In the videos from the riots, you can see absolutely furious blacks and Arabs going off in these completely ridiculous meandering diatribes about how Sweden has stolen from Africa and that we all now somehow owe them something. First off, everyone has had slaves. Pretty much every civilization has at one point owned slaves. As soon as the first person figured out that if I beat the shit out of person number 2 and make him work for me, that's pretty convenient. Since that point of time, we've had slaves. Point number 2. Everyone has screwed over Africa. Even Africans who enslaved and sold each other as slaves screwed Africa. Sweden is not the country you should be going after first if you think that the sins of our fathers somehow justifies flinging shit at the contemporary Westerner. Sweden has had some slaves in its history, true, but we're talking about such a small amount during such a short period of time that in comparison to, for instance, the Portuguese, or definitely the Arab slave trade, it's disappearingly small. It wasn't even slave trading. And you'd notice if you spent a single minute looking into Sweden's history instead of going out screaming and acting like a fucking idiot in the middle of the town square. So I'm gonna educate you on this if any of these people watch my videos, which is not happening, but anyway. One thing that constantly gets mentioned, it's dragged up every single time you're talking like how oppressed black people have been by Swedes, which is seriously an argument I've had with some people, is they bring up the very tiny island that is called St. Bartholomew. It's an island that is often mentioned by the people who want to smear Sweden's history with slave trade accusations. This little island was given to Sweden by the French King Louis XVI in exchange for French trading privileges with Gothenburg. At the time of the exchange, in 1785, there already existed little over 400 slaves on the island, but they had previously been bought by the French, not Swedes. On a few occasions, individual Swedes suggested getting into the slave trade, But anti-slavery sentiments had begun to spread and the Swedish crown became less and less interested in ever getting involved in it. So slave trade has never officially been happening under the Swedish flag. If we ignore the Vikings and their practices of träldom, which basically means turning people into serfs, pretty much. This was primarily done against Slavs, Brits, and people from the Baltic. Sweden has historically left a nearly non-existent print on the history of slave trade and slavery in general. Träldom was banned in the 1300s and all slavery was outlawed in the 1800s, pretty much the same time as most other Western European countries. We've never had chattel slavery, we've never had plantations run by black slave labor in Sweden. Vikings had trälar run farms for them, sure, but these trälar were primarily just other white Europeans, who I'm gonna guess that the racists in the Black Lives Matter movement are not that interested in. Technically, you would have more of a point, albeit stupid, if you'd say that we should go and apologize to the Russians, for instance, from which a lot of the people that got enslaved after successful Viking raids were later brought back to Sweden. But this is also a behavior that is found all over the world throughout all of human history. The defeated people got enslaved by the winners. It's been done by whites, blacks, Asians, what have you. You can't stick that only on Westerners or on Swedes. So you're in the wrong country if you want to bitch about black slavery, which you have never experienced. Sweden has had exceptionally little slavery historically, and the same goes for African colonization. So try again. We don't owe you shit. But on and on this goes. Hyperbolic bullshit, one desperately grabbed straw after another. All in an effort to make white Swedes hate themselves. And it's embarrassing how well it seems to be working and how much people give about Black Lives Matters in Sweden. No one who isn't completely morally decrepit supports the murdering of innocent black people by the police, of course. And this is good, because it's not a problem that exists here. We can protest out of sympathy for someone being murdered in another country, sure, but that's not what they're doing. They're trying to turn it into a Swedish issue. As if Sweden, with its high number of people dead or dying from the COVID-19 virus, doesn't have enough problems without these idiots flooding our streets. Do you seriously think that we need to import racial problems? Sweden? I personally thought that we'd done enough of that through our completely insane history of mass immigration. Shootings, car burnings, bombings, gang rapes, stabbings, humiliation robberies where teenagers get fucking pissed on, and now some imported pre-race war cancer from America. What a great idea. Because who wants something as boring as the wealthy, peaceful, ethnically homogenous country which I grew up in? Let's spice shit up a bit. Let's round off the mass destruction of personal property, historical monuments, and personal safety with this nitwit being a good Swedish cuck and going down on her knees and holding up a racist sign. A sign implying that white Swedes are somehow responsible for blacks being shot and killed due to no other reason than their race? The part about her little performance, which isn't only extremely cringe-inducing but terrifying, is that this snowflake right here, she actually has the right to detain you, and even to pull a gun on you. She has the right, through her role as a police officer, to threaten you with violence, while having the full support of the law behind her back, if you don't comply with whatever insanity she decides to pull on you. Just imagine that, a future breed of armed social justice warriors gulping up racist nonsense being fed to them by violent racial minorities with an anti-white racist agenda. Lovely. I think these riots should be viewed as a test. These rioters are testing the Swedish limit. How far can we push it? Rock throwing, setting cars on fire, grenade attacks, shootings, and now riots right in the middle of the city, midday. How far can we push the Swedish majority population before they break? Is there a limit? I'm not gonna start screaming about a race war, but I've been warning people about this development since I started my channel because I'm really worried about this. Honestly, I don't think I'm being tinfoil hat here. I think it could potentially, very potentially, be a problem in the future. If we don't start dealing Russia style with these hordes of violent thugs, the people who are going to do it, because someone's gonna do it sooner or later, and those who will do it instead of the police, they won't be very nice. They will be white, probably criminals themselves, and they will not be very fond of non-whites. They will have no issues with using violence, and they will view their use of it as being okay, since it's being done in order to protect the fatherland from foreign invaders. And they will be silently backed up by people who have clenched their fists in their pockets for years, and only the most brainwashed, left-hearted individuals will be able to bitch when an army of what in practice is also just thugs, who just happen to be white ultra-nationalist thugs, starts stomping the heads of other thugs who have been vandalizing our cities and attacking the native white population for years. I'm actually worried about this because, trust me, some really nasty people will get a free pass as long as what they're doing is considered to be falling under the label of vigilantism and people are scared enough. When people are scared enough, anything goes. Take my money, take my gun, take my everything, just make these people who are trying to burn down my shop go away. That's how people are gonna sound. The Swedish police needs to regain control, and to do so by showing off some of that monopoly on violence which has been given to them. Just fuck them up. Seriously. Rubber bullets, tear gas, mass arrests. Do it. We've tried nice. Sweden has tried nice. And this is where we've ended up. We always end up here with these people. Because if our men and women in blue are unwilling to do this, someone else will. People are not going to stand idly by waiting for cops to do something. Someone else is going to do it. But they're gonna do it with baseball bats, chains with padlocks, brass knuckles and knives. So with that in mind, tear gas maybe isn't that bad. It's your choice. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed my meandering and my rambling incoherence. Write me a line in the comments. I always enjoy talking to you guys. Take care of yourself. I'll see you next time. Bye.